Hi, it's Chris with Implied Music. How often has it occurred to you that you've got a four measure loop, a great chord progression, a melody or rhythm you like? And the issue becomes, how do I expand this into a longer piece? How do I extend my idea to have some kind of narrative, an arc, something that will keep the listener's attention, hopefully, say something, be part of what I'm interested in artistically? Today, I want to look at a simple technique called accumulation, to accumulate, to gradually get more and more stuff. Let's get more stuff. Well, first of all, thanks to everyone who submitted to the Halloween Hangover Challenge. Martin and I are right now going through all of the submissions. There are some 60 odd scores to our little horror video, some wonderful stuff, a lot of really creative solutions to this challenge of the story. It was fascinating to look at. We'll have some results coming up very, very soon. Now, I do shorts every week, and one of the shorts I did this past week was a very simple chord progression in parallel tenths arpeggios. Let me kind of show you how that was working. So we'll look at the whole piece in a moment, but in the meantime, I just want to show you this stack of notes. That's a C major 7 chord. And here's a C major 7 chord in the right hand. I'm playing the same voicing in each hand. But if I take that and move it up here, I'm having the same chord, the same kind of like extended idea of the chord, but in parallel tenths. So what I had done was, which was up to the root and then back down again. And I did the same thing with the right hand. So altogether, it wound up sounding and looking like this. Each of these intervals is a tenth, a diatonic tenth in the key of C major. And I changed it to C minor. There's some common tones between the two. It's just a kind of a little trick, isn't it? But super effective. Now, the next thing was, and I wondered if this would help me, what if I could do B major? And honestly, that was all the time I had in the short. I'm going to play all of the notes at once so you can see them as blocks. Here's the second one. And here's the third. Now that's 5 notes in each hand. I'm using all my fingers and just playing all at once. And that's an awful lot. And because it was an awful lot, I thought to myself, this is a chance to use accumulation. So I was first introduced to the idea of an accumulation phrase with Steve Reich's early pieces. It's used in Music for 18 Musicians, where a long, complicated phrase is first introduced with only a couple of simple notes. And then gradually we add more and more notes in until we get the final complicated phrase. It also appears in choreography. Lucinda Childs was rather famous for using accumulation phrases. In her case, she would start with a simple gesture and then add to it and then add to it. We're using a time frame and filling the time frame like you'd fill a bowl or a vessel. Childs would just gradually start with a simple length and then a longer length and a longer length. All of these are valid. All of these are a kind of accumulation. Listen, let's go back to the beginning of the piece and we'll kind of just flow through it and we'll talk our way through it. It's about 3 minutes long, but we're going to be talking the whole time. Well, I just performed this right in, and I'll tell you what the form of the piece is. Everything. We just expose the idea. That is to say, here's the introduction of the concept. This is what it's going to be like. And that just really is an 8-measure introduction. And then I drop down to just one event in each hand in each measure, and then gradually introduce a second event, and then a third, and then a fourth, until I've filled the measure back up with eighth notes. Here's the original idea. C, C minor, B major, back to C minor. And now just a C major 7. Because I wanted the sonority, I added tones underneath the top note. B major, back to C minor. And as we gradually add tones, the rhythmic complexity increases. Your artistry in this kind of composing, I think, is going to come out in which notes you choose, how you make the rhythmic identity of your accumulation build. This almost sounds like a little tango, doesn't it? As the rhythmic complexity increases, I don't have to have as many notes on every given event. So now we're basically in what is sort of melodic territory. There's only one note at a time, but there's plenty of tones happening. I love that moment right there. Some people call this kind of composing process music. It's essentially algorithmic, isn't it? And yet, I'm not leaving the choice of what's happening next up to an algorithm. I'm making a very definite decision about it. And I have to say, it takes quite a bit of concentration to play this because I'm being very strict with myself. You have to plan ahead. I wrote all this out. It's the only way I could do it. We're almost home again. We're missing 1/8 note in each hand. And now here's the original pattern. We're back to where we started about 3 minutes later. You can do this kind of thing with almost any melodic phrase. And if writing it out on paper and then performing it is just a little bit too much of a headache, you can simply copy a region multiple times and mute individual notes in the region. You won't get as expressive a performance, but you'll get that same gradually accumulating effect. There's something about the accumulation, about the gradual increase in complexity that is interesting to the brain and to the ear. Harmonies sound a little bit different when they're dense versus when they're more melodic. It's so interesting to me. I'm not sure I'd ever publish this piece or release it as is. I think it needs a B section. Probably the B section would be B minor, C sharp minor. I think what we do is we go to C sharp minor and then B major, play around with that before it settles back down on C again. And I have to say, there's lots of other possibilities around the idea of parallel tenths. What if they're not parallel? What if they're going in contrary motion? I've done examples of that. And I've actually talked about the idea of common tone modulation like this an awful lot. So we're sort of stitching together a bunch of ideas that we've had some experience with this piece. The idea of accumulation is a broad one. See how it works for you. See how it might work for you in your drum programming. What's it like in your bass parts, etc., etc. Well, I hope this has been useful. Like and subscribe, ding the bell. You'll be notified when I do my videos, and I'll see you next time.